Welcome to RV Talk Radio. Here we talk about RV living, RV lifestyles, and RV travel. We also celebrate the RV lifestyle that gives us the chance to do outdoor activities that we couldn't do in a normal lifestyle. So thanks for joining us. Grab yourself a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, and let's talk about RVs. Well, hello everyone. This is Rob Scribner from RV Talk Radio, also known as Rangerrob. And yes, it's been a long time since we've done a show. And what's motivated me to do a show? Well, gosh, a couple of things. Yes, I'm very much enthusiastic about RVing. But one of the things that really came to mind, especially after reading a couple comments from some of our shows, that a lot of RVers that are doing shows are not your traditional, which is the majority of people that are, retiring, think about hitting the road for a while, and they put in their time. Maybe they finally retired, they finally got their Social Security, or finally got pensions, or good investments, and they're just ready to go hit the road. And they maybe bought an RV or have had it for a while. A lot of them may, I'm kind of painting the scenario, may have a house already. And so what I want to do with this show is talk about hitting the RV world traditionally, folks that are retired and they've got a set income and they don't have to work anymore, and they just want to hit the road. They don't want to even necessarily start a YouTube channel. They aren't trying to sell products. They just want to go RVing. And so what I wanted to describe in this show, what it was like for Sherry and I to hit the road, and we were a little younger, but we were kind of in got to a point where we're making a income as kind of like retired folks. So there's so many emotions and so many things that we had to do to get fired up for the first time. And I want to talk about that big time, that special moment when Sherry and I both said, "Cause let's go travel." Now, I watch a lot of shows, and one show I really get a kick out is called Good Simple Living. And there's some folks that made the decision to sell their house in Vancouver, Washington, and move up to North Idaho and start a house and property and a farm homestead from scratch. Making that scary move of selling their house because they needed the capital to be able to build a house and build a barn and buy 20 acres and live very secluded with their children. And so I want to talk about what it was like once you made that one decision that would change everything, but for the good, hopefully. But I want to talk about the realities, and first thing I want to tell you is just because you've retired and just because you became an RVer does not mean life does not go on as normal. And when I say normal, I'm talking about bills, health problems, a death. A friend of mine who's RVing was... and I'm glad they almost didn't get a chance to got to go RVing, and just recently lost his wife. And I'm telling you, and he was on the road. So you imagine life will go on. Life doesn't stop, and hardships or changes will be there, even if you have retired and decided to hit the road and enjoy the nation and go see the world a little bit. That's one of the biggest messages I want to send out on this show is, yes, you've made the decision to RV. Now what? What decisions, what feelings, what things scared you, Rob, and what scared Sherry? And when you actually hit the road, what was it like? Did it really change your life? Did it really change your relationship? It's a lot to take on. And so that's what this show is all about. But I also need to tell you a little bit about what's going on with RV Talk Radio. Well, we're going to rejuvenize it a little bit and get going again. We do not have a website anymore. We are working directly off of Spreaker and several other platforms. You'll find RV Talk Radio on Spotify, iHeart Radio. Spreaker is our main area to find us. And we are also syndicated not on some of the older stations we talked about, but they point to the same place. We localized our radio station to Central Oregon Radio. And so you'll find episodes of RV Talk Radio, hundreds of them, being syndicated there. So kind of excited about that. Simplified the process of making our podcasts and made it available to you. If you understand Spreaker and iHeart Radio and all that stuff, you can play it on your cell phone, you can play it on your PC, you can play it on your Echo. It's a new world out there, and I urge some of you folks to get out there and go ahead and learn some of these new processes. It's just, things change. We can't just do everything on AM, FM radio anymore. And having the website anymore, one is a cost savings to us, and the site was getting so big that the hosting companies were getting a little upset of the fact that we were taking up so much space with MP3s. And so now we have a regular platform for podcasts like RV Talk Radio, along with a lot of our other shows on Spreaker. So anyway, if you go down to the description below, all the links to the places that support and how to listen to RV Talk Radio and all the platforms and stuff are there. So let's talk about making that big decision to become an RVer. So I'll never, ever forget when we made that decision. It was like 2006 for us. When we decided, Sherry and I were going 100%. I was pursuing marketing, internet marketing stuff. Sherry was working. We were up in Washington State in a place called Maple Valley. And we were working our butts off. And you could feel a little bit of anxiety. Our oldest daughter is kind of finally going off on her own. And Sherry and I were uptight all the time. And you could just feel that something needed to change. This routine of this work, crazy work was just too much. And we had the opportunity, money-wise and marketing-wise, to we got to do something different. We got to drop out of society and do our own thing and discover each other again. And when we finally did it, the first thing we did was before we even we made the decision, but we had to prepare for it. And so that's one of the things I need to pass on here, is preparing for the journey. I had to change our vehicle, and so the first thing we went out and did is buy it was a used truck with 10,000 miles on it, and it was, here's reality. Somebody had a beautiful beautiful Ford dually, totally set up for a fifth wheel. And turns out that when they went traveling, he lost his wife. And so he decided to come off the road and put his truck up for sale. So I got a good price on a really nice dually with the 7.3 liter engine in it. Just a two-wheel drive, not a four-wheel drive. Why is that? Because two-wheel drives actually have a higher load capacity than a four-wheel drive. So this truck could easily handle 20,000 pounds, where typically most of them are four-wheel drives are 15. That's probably changed a little bit since now. But anyway, that's one of the things there. I'm going to be drinking coffee as I tell this story and tell these emotions that really I know a lot of you guys go through. So we found the truck, and that was really cool. And we already had another trailer that was just your typical kind of trailer. And so we also went shopping for a fifth wheel. And we decided a fifth wheel because we've done, well, back then we haven't experienced, we did eventually do a motorhome for a while, and I'll talk about those a little bit. But we went with a fifth wheel because fifth wheels feel like a home more than a motorhome. I can tell you that for sure. And so, yeah, when you park a fifth wheel and put out the slides, it's like a little house, and it feels very comfortable. And that's one thing we just definitely had the vibes that, yeah, we could live in this day to day and feel comfortable. And later on, I'm not going to talk about all of our instances of travel, but when we moved to a motorhome, we did like a motorhome. Motorhome was nice, but I don't care how you look at it. Most motorhomes always end up looking the same, and there's only so much they can do with it. I mean, there's multiple slides and stuff. We did have a 40-foot Discovery, so we do have the experience of having a motorhome, but that was later on. But we chose the fifth wheel because it just felt comfortable. Now, I'll tell you now, depending when you retire and decide to hit the road, a fifth wheel can be a handful. I remember times that we were driving in a motorhome and we got into a big, bad rain sprawl going into Idaho or something like that. So we pulled into I think it was like a Walmart, and we just stopped. I didn't even have to go outside. All I was doing is pushing buttons. I pushed buttons and my levelers came out, and I pushed another button. My slides came out. We had 4 slides on our Discovery. It might be 3. I don't remember. And, we're totally ready to just sack out and get through the rainstorm and get going the next morning, where fifth wheel's a little bit more cumbersome. So there, there's pros and cons to all of it, but, it also depends. Do you feel comfortable driving a trailer, or do you feel comfortable, can you feel comfortable driving something as big as a school bus, you might say? So it's the big differences. So anyway, we ended up with a Montana, and it's not the same Montana we have now. It was a different one at the time, but we've always liked the Montanas just because of resale value, and it seems like every fifth wheel has their problems, but we were pretty happy with the qualities. When you buy a new, and we bought new, and because we wanted the warranty and stuff, and it's something to discuss there. That's everybody's finances is a little different. Because like we have a fifth wheel now, we bought new. We're still paying on it, and we're not even traveling right now because you can go underwater in a fifth wheel or motorhome very quickly. So keep that in mind. But initially, we finally found the beast. And when we bought the beast, we just lived in Maple Valley and had a very, suburban kind of lifestyle. So when we were to pull that fifth wheel up to the house to get our living things we decided to live with in there, it was a big event because we squeezed it in a area that really wasn't designed to have trailers around and stuff. And we had to get her loaded up and ready to go because we really, and we're coordinating selling our house and the whole thing at the time. And there's a lot of lessons learned, by the way, on this conversation. But before, so we got the 2 main things we needed was a truck and a fifth wheel to travel with. But here's the big part. We to take a few steps back, where the big life change came. The biggest scare, I think it was for us, when we decided, and now in hindsight, I wouldn't actually recommend this. I've tried to have done something different. But we decided to sell our house and get rid of all of our stuff. And we still stored away like really important things like refrigerators and washers and dryers and all the family albums and all that stuff. We actually did it all pretty much in a 10 by 10. It was hard to believe. So we took a very large house and we took all of our sold at a garage sale. And it was just so weird getting rid of all this stuff, but it was kind of refreshing at the same time. It was like a big load, because every time, you need to remember that every time you own something, you're kind of responsible for it. So if you own a car, you're responsible for it, and you add on to it. If you own a trailer, you're responsible for it. If you own refrigerators, washers, dryers, all that stuff, you're responsible for it. You got to keep it running and maintain it. You have a dog, or you have a cat, or you have bedroom sets and all this stuff, and a house, and all those things. You have more responsibility. You're accountable for it. So as you let that stuff go, although it's hard to do when you've lived a whole life of material things, it's a sinking feeling, but a happy feeling. It's mixed. It's hot and cold. And so I got to tell you that doing that decision was really, really tough. It was, one voice is going, you really want to do this? You want to give all this? You got all this stuff and you're getting rid of it. The other side's going, you're getting rid of stuff. Less and less responsibility. It was hard. That was a very hard decision. Now, I'm going to back up a little bit after hindsight, after traveling over the years. I think everybody should still keep a base, or somehow, whether you downsize, sell your house, downsize to having a small house somewhere, or maybe a park view model type thing in Arizona or something, a place that's solid, a place to go to, a place to get out of the rig, a place to be more solid, and I don't know, time to regroup if you have to. That's hindsight talking there, but at the time, that's not the decision we made. We made the decision to sell everything and go travel, and it was a great experience, I'll tell you that, but scary, because you're totally in unfamiliar territory. Everything from traveling to your routine, to which way you're going to go, to paying attention to the weather, all of those things you're going to learn. And of course, we learned some of it the hard way from, traveling over passes, or not going south soon enough, or hitting a windy, gusty weather that scared the heck out of you when you're driving. And I think the number one rule that we learned really fast, and let me get a sip of coffee here, was time management. What do I mean by time management? Well, the big thing was when you first start traveling, you got all these expectations of things you want to see. So you pick up and go, pick up and go, pick up and go. And two things actually. Things have changed, and two, that can be very stressful, by the way. So learning how to slow down was something we learned the hard way. And of course, we're a little younger. Especially now that I am in the retirement age over the 60s, I totally understand it. But when we first had a chance to travel, we were in our late 40s. I think it was 40s. Yeah, closer to 50, I think. Anyway, time management. Learning to get to some place and staying there a while, whether not just 2 or 3 days, but 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month. That's what really, really changed for us in traveling. Once we realized that this pick up and going, although it was exciting, it sucks the life out of you. And it takes a lot of time to really get a feel for an area. Because, you can go into an area and he's like, there's some things you want to see, and there's some particular kind of shopping you might want to see. But to really learn an area, whether it's a small town or a big town, you need to give it time. And Sometimes you have to work your schedule around the working people, so you avoid some of the traffic during the commuting hours. So, instead of going to visit Sedona on a weekend, since you're traveling full time, you want to visit Sedona during the weekdays when the working people are back to work. And learning to change your schedule, learning to change your and by the way, it's really hard. To this day, I have a hard time realizing that Saturday, Sunday is not the program. You're programmed all your life that Saturday and Sunday is your time off. But when you're retired and you're full timing, that's not true anymore. And it's hard to get past that. I don't know. Maybe some people are better at it than Sherry and I were, but to get past the fact that you had to do things on the weekends and you had to work on the weekdays, even when you're retired and you're not working, because with us, that's actually when we began RV Talk Radio, and we did do some virtual kind of work. So we did tend to still keep that kind of mindset. And that's a hard one to shake. But getting back to before we actually hit the road and you start selling off all your stuff and you get everything stored. And so you're stressed every night. You're kind of thinking through, am I making a mistake or not? And then, of course, we had a house up for sale. So we were going through the chaos of selling off everything. At the same time, people looking at our house. And, it was very stressful, very scary. I can't use that word enough. It was really scary because you're totally changing your lifestyle, your habits, your, 40 or 50 years of learning that you work 9 to 5 and going through the routine and provide for the kids and all that kind of stuff. All of it's out the door. I can't express it. Scary. And I'll never forget when we finally got kind of the last things into the house, and Sherry was kind of cleaning up the house, little things, because she, even though it was sold, she wanted to make sure it still was really nice. And I was ready to hit the road. And of course, we had the neighbors all pointing at this monstrous trailer that we had that I'm normally. If it was there any longer than that, I would have had HOA all over us. So anyway, we finally hit the road, and our very first trip was to go over I-5 and over Suquamish Pass and stay at a place called Easton RV Park, which was the very first RV park that we'd ever go to. And and we had this new RV that we were still trying to figure out how to work. So, and we had a second car, which eventually we would be, what was following us, that we would leave at her folks for a long period of time. So we had a secondary car in case we ever needed it. So, but I had the big truck that was towing the fifth wheel. So the car later on would be trailered on our motorhome that we got later in life, a few years later. So pretty much we sold off everything except our second car, and our second car was paid for, and that was good. But the truck we did have to finance, and so did we finance the fifth wheel. And of course, this is earlier on, so the price of fifth wheels now, I can't believe the numbers I'm seeing. But big money for this stuff. Finding something used is fine, but you're going to be doing a lot of work on it and fixing it and maintaining it. So, what's better, buy new and have a warranty, or buy used and never know what's going to break next? But like I said, these are little thoughts that hit my head as we go through this story. So that first night when we left the house, it was our finally on the road. There was that uneasy feeling because everything was new. The fifth wheel was new. The truck was fairly new. The getting into an RV. Never really stayed in an RV park. I think we stayed there 1 day or 2 days because our goal was to go down to Central Oregon and go to, I think we went to Fossil, because we were going to make that our first destination to go to a bluegrass festival. So, yeah. So, but yeah, so learning how to get over our past driving for the first time was a little scary. Getting into an RV park for the first time, and it wasn't the best RV park to be going to for your first time. And I think we're I can't remember our whole schedule. I do know we spent a lot of time in Washington State because there was a couple things with the RV that needed to be fixed, and we're waiting for some. We had a water leak on one of our tanks, and we had to wait for a tank to be shipped in Tacoma to take the RV over to have them replace it, and because it was just a seal problem or a crack in. And being a new RV was under warranty, but so we were kind of stuck in Washington a little bit, but it was kind of good that we didn't go much farther because we had to kind of get used to driving, picking up, resetting up the trailer, reconnecting it, and also learning that every RV park's a little different. One place, we had a dog with us all the time. One place loved dogs, and the next one would be hate dogs, and in limited areas. And pretty soon it was like all these little things you had to kind of pick up on, especially before you even registered to go into an RV park, of learning how to make sure that the resources you want are going to be there. The other thing was a problem for us, since we were under 60, we were in our late 40s, is we'd go into parks that were for 55 and over. We thought that was a problem, but it turns out it really wasn't. Yeah, it was just the whole world was different. RV parks and getting registered in them. Now, the problem now is, now that so many people are RVing, it's a whole different ball game than when Sherry and I first started in 2006. You could pretty much get into any RV park you wanted to. And, of course, we're going to talk about memberships and things like that as we go here. But now they're talking about you need to get your registrations and planning out 6 months to a year now, just to really plan out RV trips if you're really going to hit the country. Where 2006, it was not quite a problem. Now, the other thing that comes along with RV parks is like, depending on how you're going to travel, there's all these different kinds of RV parks where you could get memberships like 1,000 Trails. There was some other types of savings programs, and they're not on the top of my head right now, but that do or do not make sense for you to do. For example, 1,000 Trails, since we're from the Northwest, there were some practicalities of doing that if you wanted to go along the Washington and Oregon coast, because you could get memberships through 1,000 Trails for, I don't know what the cost was then, but later on when we did it again, it was around $600 a year or something like that. But you'd still pay like $3 per night as long as you get your reservations in and stuff. So it had a real benefit for the Northwest, but it did not have any benefit when you decided to go east a little more and towards Arizona and stuff like that too. So there's pros and cons to all that. So of course, as you're on the road, and you get to meet some very interesting people, you get to learn about different programs out there that might work with you or work for you. And of course, there's the ultimate thing of learning how to do boondocking. And so I will talk about that. Let's talk about boondocking a little bit. Yeah, so the boondocking. When we first started in 2006, we didn't have anything that was other than what was on our trailer already as far as sustainability. But later on, I'll tell you that when we bought the current fifth wheel we have now, we did do a few things to the current one now, which is a Montana. It's a 3625, and we did have them install an 85-watt solar panel on the top, so we could keep our batteries charged up. And we also realized that when you try to watch television or watch movies or anything like that, we put an inverter system to handle our entertainment system only, because everything else we had either propane or anything else to sustain heat and things like that. So that's from experience. And then the other thing we bought is internet was always a problem, and it was really bad in 2006. But it was still bad in 2015 when we did a full-timing again. I know I try not to really go through those processes other than just tell you experiences. Internet was always a problem, and to my understanding, it's still kind of a problem, and it can be very expensive. But we put Wi-Fi Ranger on our unit, which was really cool. For example, what it does is give you extension, is an antenna on top of your RV, that if there's an internet out there that is nearby, it can pick it up and then repeat it and have it playable. So what was really cool, like we'd go to like Thousand Trails and Seaside, and their internet was at their community center. And we did like, I want to use my computer in my RV. What was really cool is my antenna could actually still reach the internet that's over at the community center and send it over to my RV without having to go to the community center to work on my laptop. So that's what the Wi-Fi Ranger really did for you. And then once the Wi-Fi Ranger was installed, it also created a network inside so all my devices were always tied into my Wi-Fi Ranger, which just made it all that much easier to watch Netflix or whatever we wanted to do, or work on our computers or have Alexa, whatever. And it was all tied into Wi-Fi Ranger. If I couldn't get internet from outside, we did have hotspot units if there was just no internet at all, and that's where boondocking comes in. So when we first started doing any kinds of boondocking, we were fine for maybe a day, maybe two, but water was always a problem, tanks were always a problem, internet often a problem, and power. So you just make do. It's kind of more like camping than it is having all the resources at your fingertips like you do in a house. And then the propane, oh my gosh, some places you go, what a ripoff. You could really get hammered on the price of propane. And so later on when we did boondocking at Ocean Shores, Washington, at the casino, they had a great place to go boondocking. And it's changed a little bit, but you can still do it. You used to be able to go there for free. It was awesome. And we stayed there for a week. In 2015, but what really killed us was I had power and I had internet, all right. But what I was really having problem was heating. I was, because we went full time in the second time in winter, and I was going through almost a propane, 1 tank of propane a day, and it was costing me $25 because that was the only place I could get propane in Ocean Shores. And so we were spending, $25 a day in propane just filling up the tanks. Of course, every other day we had to go fill up tanks again because we were using a tank a day. And we tried to be conservative, but that was probably the biggest thing, was a shocker. Other than that, everything else we had was, we had the extra power. We had the charged up batteries. We had the Wi-Fi Ranger. We were in good shape. But getting back to, making that initial decision to do RVing was, once again, scary. And then it didn't stop being scary. It started getting a little bit familiar in some cases, but realize that your life of pattern that you've had so long changes, where now every day can be a little bit different. And by the way, that's a good thing. It's good for the mind and it's good for the soul. To have everything always being routine. You can still have your routine cup of coffee maybe, but maybe you have to check out by 10 o'clock in the morning, or maybe you have to get propane, or maybe you're having water issues, or maybe you need to flush your tanks, and nothing is. Your life of pattern will really be changed. It would be either gone, or there'll be some things in life that are just you can keep as a pattern, but unless you're staying at your RV parks and places at a little bit longer periods of time, where you stay at one place for 1 or 2 months instead of just a week or two, then you can kind of get some routine in your life. If you like a little bit of routine, and a lot of people do, that's, to me, the best way to RV travel is, go to one place and stay a month or two or stuff. And then of course there's the next great big thing we need to talk about is snowbirds and sunbirds. Well, let's talk about sunbirds and snowbirds. It's like, okay, maybe you've heard of one, but you may not have heard the other. So that was one thing that we discovered once we got out there, is there's some folks that kind of like that routine and only want to go to a couple of regions. So a lot of them, let's say they live in Montana or Washington or Idaho. Sunbirds are people who are chasing the sun. And so they'll take their RV and go down south. And what's really starting to change a lot is a lot of people are leaving their RVs down south and just driving back home and leaving their RV in place and still keeping their spot and paying for it all year round. Which is, not a bad way if you really think about it. It's like a secondary home. So you can also look at your RV later on, or maybe you want to do that right up front instead of traveling all the time. Find some of your favorite places and put your RV in those places and leave them there. Then you don't have to go through the hassle of, moving them around all the time. But there's drawbacks to that too. But there's the other thing called the snowbirds. And so, for example, there's people that may have RVs in Reno, or maybe in Colorado, or in other places in back east, where they're running away from the snow. I said that all wrong. There's places that get really hot. So let's say you live in Arizona, or you live in New Mexico, or you live in Nevada. So there's tons of people that, like in Washington State, this is where I learned this. They would keep their RVs in storage up in Washington State. And a good example of that is Anacortes. I've done actually videos about this. And so these big storage areas have all these RVs in it. And it turns out they're all out of state. And so what happens is, when it starts getting too hot down south, they call ahead and make sure that they have an RV spot in Anacortes for the summer. Then they drive up to the storage place and go in and grab their RV, or they'll get a transport person to move it. Even some of them don't even. So much to tell you. So when I was up in Washington, I noticed there was a lot of people with RVs and fifth wheels, and only had a car. There's no truck with them. It's like, how did they get their fifth wheel there? That's when I started meeting these sunbirds. And it turns out they take their RV and call a transport company, and they're just people that'll move RVs for a fee of $100, $150 and set it up for you. over to the RV park that they had reservations for, and basically and have their dates in place and let the transport people know they need to come pick up the RV and put it back into the storage unit at a certain time in, say, September. So so it's pretty much the opposite of a snowbird is the sunbirds. And so discovered that's a kind of a neat way, because we met some great people that lived in like Arizona and stuff and came up to Washington State every summer, staying at the same RV park. May not be in the same space every year and stuff. So back at least then, there was some of these RV parks did some really clever things for allow you to keep their RV there. I had a place where up in Anacortes where during the winter we would take our RV, and we were still working at the time, let us keep our RV in a space for during the off season for like $80 a month, and then when only time we paid more is when we were actually there, and then it was like $20 or $30 a day to pay for the weekend. So my RV would be in place, we'd get there, and then we'd go to the office and we'd pay like $80 for the weekend, because then we're using their power, they're using their resources and stuff like that, and then we'd shut it down again on Sunday night and then go home. And we had that about 1 or 2 years. It was a great way of having a fifth wheel. This is later on. This is not initially when we did our first RV. Like I said, our story's endless. We went full-timing, and then we stopped for a while and full-timed again later on. So that's why I've got all these different stories. But initially, I've told you the scariness of getting started, and then the emptiness of knowing you don't own as much stuff, but freedom that you don't. And then the scariness of getting on the road and your whole life changes, but it does start getting familiar a little bit later on. However, what I really want to start talking about is the changes that went on over time as full-timers that Sherry and I went through, that some people don't go through these changes, but I think most people do. And so that's the next thing I really want to talk about is RV travel and the changes and that occur when as you RV and you start discovering what makes you happy. So Sherry and I started out very first time selling our house and saying we're going to hit the road and go see stuff. And of course, none of it went quite as planned because we had some problems with the RV and we had to get some warranty work, and we couldn't get out of Washington State very fast and stuff. But, so I want to paint that picture of you may have this perfect plan, but life still happens, and you still get sick, and you still have doctor's appointments. You still have things, or a crisis in the family. Those things don't go away. And of course, I have a friend that just recently lost their wife on the road, and I'm telling you, life goes on. And of course, every time something changes, it could change your RV plans and your routine big time. And I've also been describing to you that there's so many different ways to use your RV, from actually traveling constantly to partial traveling, or from one spot to another because of weather, or using your RV like a vacation home and putting in a location permanently, so you can go from one region to another, especially if you have a base. And then there's also just using it for work purposes. Maybe you're in construction and you live in a certain area, but you got to do work outside of the state. You can take your fifth wheel, and your family can stay in the house while you're doing work out of state and stuff. So there's so many things you can do with an RV. So with Sherry and I, what I want to kind of talk about was what we realized is we were starting to enjoy, once we got kind of used to was, we got to quit just going to these places for only a week or something, or a couple of days. It started changing where we'd stay at places for a week, 2 weeks, a month. And we just had to kind of make sure it was going to be a place that we wouldn't get bored at. And so you may find that you may have one idea of how you want to RV. Maybe you want to go see things, or go cross country, or see the East Coast, or go see the South, or whatever. And so you really want to do that. Couple of days here, couple of days here, travel, drive. But that got really old with me and Sherry. So we're just starting to discover, like, let's start staying at places longer. And of course, you do get discounts that way. If you can get 1 week rates, 1 month rates, which are a lot better than overnighting. And then there's RV parks so you can really get ripped off. Like, we had to go up to Washington once and stay in a KOA right in Kent, Washington, and they were charging $75 a day. And I think that's not unusual now, but back then it was like, are you kidding me? But we had to make, we were going to a wedding. We just wanted to make sure we got there, and it was the only place close enough to the area that we wanted to go to this wedding for. Or I think it was for Christmas holidays or something. I don't remember. But anyway, we had to use them, and it just killed me. I mean, it was just like, we could afford it at the time. It's just paying $75 a night then for an RV space was like insane. We're used to $35, $40 maybe. That was worst case scenario back then. It did change over time. It wasn't unusual to pay $1,000 a month or up to $1,200 a month for some RV parks down in Arizona, and we kind of had one that was nicer than some of the others. You could, I don't know what they are now, but I do know the prices are going up, and of course the newer problem is trying to get a space in the first place, and then hoping that the RV place you're going to is organized enough not to mess up your reservation, because that could really ruin your day. And but I guess what I really want to tell you is, just because you have one concept in your head how RVing should be, you may find between you and your spouse that what you thought was going to be fun was not so much fun a couple of months later. And Sherry and I went through those things, like, the pick up and going and travel and unfamiliar grocery stores and things like that. After a while, it got kind of, stressful. So it didn't take long for us to decide that we needed to slow down and stay at places longer. And so it changed the planning, it changed the timing. And you may have kids you want to go visit in other states. You got weather to keep in mind. And you may have some glorious spots you'd like to see that you really want to give yourself time. And if, just because you want to see the Grand Canyon, doesn't mean you don't want to stay at an RV park near the Grand Canyon for more than a week or two, because you'll discover that beyond just the Grand Canyon, there's tons of really pretty places to go see and roads to go discover, and maybe a day trip to some other towns that you've never seen, like Page before or something like that. It just changes everything. And, of course, having a pet with you and stuff like that also kind of controls the narrative a little bit. But don't think something's going wrong when you decide that, I don't like this pick up and go all the time. To slow it down. And that's really isn't that what we're all trying to do? Is, we've been in this, everybody's in this fast paced go thing. And even with Sherry and I, me being retired, I'm still got that go, but I don't know how many times I still got to tell myself, stop and smell the roses, slow down. That's what travel, a lot of people say they want to see the world, they want to see the nation, they want to see the different places, and they want to slow down. Well, even with RVing, you need to tell yourself that. and change. You will change over time as you hit the road. Just do what you want to do at first and see how you feel, and make sure with your partner, really important, communication, talk. You may just love driving every day and doing long hauls of 400 miles a day, where your partner's like, oh my gosh, this is killing me. I hate it. And they're afraid to tell you. You need to talk and say, how did you feel about that? Was that drive too long for you? Maybe we should change it to no more than 200 miles a trip or less. Talk. You need to talk, and you need to visit your feelings every day, making sure that both of you are enjoying the experience. And if one says, I wish we could stay at these places a little longer, then you, who may be the anxious one, needs to give it a try. And you may find yourself, even though you're an anxious person and want to go, you actually may discover you like it too. It's just your brain works a little different than your spouse does. And that's okay. But communication, I think it was one thing was really important between me and Sherry was talk about our feelings, talk about the things I hated about setup and getting the truck connected all the time, and let her know that that's all right to do once in a while, but it seems like that's all I'm doing is maintaining this RV. Can't we just chill out? And Sherry is more of a chiller than me, but even you, the anxious one, you may find yourself, you're like, yeah, I am starting to feel like I'm anxious. I've always got something to fix and all these things. I'm not enjoying myself. Well, tell your spouse that. Talk about it and find out what kind of schedule, what kind of a routine, and what kind of entertainment you guys all like. Maybe you enjoy going to casinos, and maybe you enjoy seeing museums, and maybe you just enjoy parks, or maybe you're following some of your sports, certain football games or something like that, or baseball games you want to go see. A lot of people go to Arizona to go see the baseball teams go practice before they go start the season. And it's just, you need to talk. Communication is key. Well, to summarize some of the things we've talked about in this show is I'm hoping, there's nothing more thrilling than the fact of being able to hit the road, to travel, to see things, to have the freedom to go see the world a little bit. There's a lot of things to keep in mind: weather, timing, your health. Maybe, you have doctor's appointments you got to keep up. The big thing is, the summary is, life still goes on. The same kind of things you got to realize. What are some of the things that are always pulling you, other than your routine at home, that you'll have to support when you're RV traveling? That's really important to keep in mind. Doctor's appointments, maybe you have health issues, maybe you have therapies or things like that you got to keep up with. And medications is another big thing too. Prescriptions. And so I don't want to scare anybody from RVing at all. It's just planning. This whole show is about planning. And am I the only ones with this feelings? I'm scared. It is scary. It's a change. Change is hard for some people. And how will I? And of course, there's so many videos and so many resources and books and DVDs out there to tell you about RVing. The big thing you got to keep in mind this time is planning is really important. RV parks are more crowded than ever. And boondocking is also an issue you need to be educated on, like where to go and how much time you have, and weather. I bring up weather a lot because, who wants a boondock in Arizona in the middle of the summer when it's 110 degrees? You just got to plan things more. So learn how to plan, give yourself resources, software, books, educate yourself on as much as you can before you get out there. And also realize that the cost is not so much different than owning, living in a house. So if you're keeping your base, you're basically going to have the cost of another base. If you're selling your home and hitting the road, realize that your expenditures can come close to a household expenditure. Just because you're in a little fifth wheel doesn't mean you're not paying $1,000 or $1,200 a month in rent. And then you got, you may not be paying for power and electric, but you're paying for resources. Now there is places, by the way, that if you they may charge you for electrical on top of the rent that you're paying for your RV space. But realize the cost. There's ways to cut corners, but if you cut corners and you're not having fun, then what's the point? So realize the reality of cost is it's still, costs a lot of money to either RV or stay at home. It's all the same. It's just, how do you want to do it? And how do you feel every day if you're, you open the door to your RV and see a whole new view. One time it might be an ocean. The next time might be the forest. The next time might be high desert. It could be open the door and be snow. And it'll be rain, and you'll see weather that you've never seen before. That's probably a big shocker, like monsoons. Never seen a monsoon before. I was from Washington. I know what rain is, but I didn't know what a monsoon was. You may know when you're in a tornado area or places where, parts of hurricanes hit the areas in Texas and Florida and stuff, and you're going to see stuff you've never seen before, and wind or gusts that you've never driven in before. And it's all a big adventure, and it's a lot of fun, and it can be scary. There's that word again. But if you can handle a little scary, no panic, realize that life is scary. Life has always got change. Life is always challenging. And some people don't want that challenge. But once you get traveling in your blood, it's always there. Like Sherry and I are more based because we're homesteading now. But we get the itch a lot where it's like, gosh, can't we just get in the fifth wheel and go take off for a week? But who's going to feed the pigs? Who's going to feed the chickens? Who's going to take care of our little farm where we're gone? And Sherry's still working. We're in our 60s and Sherry's still working. So there'll probably be a round 3 for us. We've done it twice. But I think, we'll always have a base now. That's something we've learned that we like. Having a base is important. And you also need an exit strategy. And there will be a time that something will happen. You may lose a spouse or health-wise or something to hang it up. Just like one time you sold all your stuff in your house and all that stuff, or made that decision. Well, maybe a time when it's time to let go of the RV and settle down. Our health, our age, and the whole works have changed things a little bit. We need to do this differently, and that's okay. And so, yeah. So I hope you enjoyed this show. It was really nice to get back on doing RV Talk Radio. I am trying to work on having Aaron from Three Tails RV, who is the gentleman who just lost his wife. I may ask some very critical questions to him, but I think it's a reality we all need to talk about. It's like, okay, I'm on the road, and one of you pass away. What are you going to do? And you may just stay on the road. But he'll talk about the emotions and what he went through. So guys, thank you for listening to RV Talk Radio. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please take the time to like, subscribe, and share our video or show whenever you can. We appreciate that. Guys, have a great day. Until next time, bye now. Our videos are made possible by Rangerrob Poopy Bags, available at Amazon right now. Thank you very much for watching our video. Please take the time to like, subscribe, and share our videos all over the whole wide world. Thanks.